Hi, it's Sunday, November 9th, and we're tracking Typhoon Fung-Wong, Philippine name Uwan, as it gets very close to the central Philippines today. You can see the eye of the storm getting very close to land, and the system has been intensifying pretty quickly overnight and is now very close to being a super typhoon, and is still forecast to do that later today by Pagasa. And we talked about yesterday how one important thing to watch in short term was little track wobbles. Where does the eye exactly track? Because that would be very important for the central Philippines, especially these northernmost islands, for determining who gets the worst winds as this approaches landfall in Luzon. And unfortunately, today we've seen a shift to the south, which has brought the typhoon force wind field ashore, and that will progressively move towards the west as the core of the storm gets closer to landfall in Luzon. And for that reason, we've had Signal 4 warnings issued for these northern islands here in the central Philippines. And if the storm does become a super typhoon, we may see some of these islands get upgraded to Signal 5. Pagasa has said that a Signal 5 warning may be needed, especially for Luzon as we get towards landfall of likely a super typhoon here going through the day today and into tonight. But you can see as well the broad expanse of Signal 2 and Signal 3 warnings across really the entire northern half of the Philippines, showing you how expansive this storm's impacts are going to be. And this is really well illustrated if we look at the initial wind field from Pagasa. And you can see really across most of the Philippines, we are being impacted by strong winds of the storm. And so preparations should be completed by this point, especially in Luzon, as conditions are now too dangerous to go out and prepare. And now it's just hunkering down and riding out the storm as it comes through, and landfall is again expected sometime this evening, a local time. And you can see the wind field on this as we go to a high resolution hurricane model look of this. And you can see the deviation that we've had south. If I go back a few runs, you'll see that the model was expecting it to be further north, but we've now deviated to the south. And this eye wall on the southwestern side is likely going to be impacting a lot of these northern islands here in the central Philippines throughout the day today. And we'll see it rake that coast and bringing a lot of storm surge as well. We have potential for over 3 meters of storm surge along this entire coast because of all these strong winds. And then we move into landfall into Luzon, and this is likely to remain a large and powerful typhoon as it comes ashore. And we're also expecting a wide zone of over 3 meters of storm surge north of where the system makes landfall, especially. That's where the storm surge will be maximized going in. And you can see this here across the forecast from Pagasa. This is a storm surge forecast, and anything in red here is 3 meters of surge or higher. But you can see just again how much of an expanse this storm has across the Philippines. We could even be seeing areas in the central Philippines that just got hit by Calmegi last week get some surge out of this. And even on the western side of Luzon, even though it will be weaker, it's still going to be a very large storm. And so we could still expect very significant storm surge along this western coast as it comes offshore. And of course, that's just two of the impacts. Another major impact that we're going to be dealing with is heavy rainfall as the system comes through. And you can see across much of the northern Philippines, we could be seeing rainfall totals exceed 150 to 200 millimeters. And especially in higher terrain in Luzon, we could see totals exceed 300 or 400 millimeters in localized spots. And that's on top of what we've gotten already. We have had some outer bands start to rotate into the central and northern Philippines, and those have already brought some heavy rainfall across this region. And so flooding is likely to be a persisting issue for the next several days, even as the winds die down in the storm post landfall. Now, going past the Philippines, you can see again rapid weakening forecast as it comes across the high terrain of Luzon, and it's forecast to be a very large typhoon, even larger than it is now by the time it comes off into the South China Sea. And the good news is that with it being late November, or early November rather, is the waters across this part of the South China Sea are pretty cooled off from all the cold fronts coming down from further north. So we're not expecting a big rebound from the system. So we're not looking at re-intensifying into a strong typhoon. We'll likely see it more so just gradually weaken as it turns towards the north and comes towards China or Taiwan. And models are still a little bit split onto exactly where the system is going to go by this point. They're in general agreement that the turn happens to the north because we have this area of high pressure here, and so that's going to turn the system to the north. But exactly where does it go? Does it go into Taiwan, into southern Japan, or do we see it deviate to the northwest and start to go into the south coast of China? The main reason for this split in the model guidance appears to be the rate that models are weakening it. If I take a sounding by this point, over the storm, you'll see that in the mid levels we have southerly flow. So that's trying to push the storm north, and that would be a scenario where we get the storm into China or Taiwan if it stays stronger for longer. But note that below that level, we have more easterly flow in the mid to lower levels of the atmosphere. So if the storm weakens more substantially, then it would be feeling less of this flow in the mid to upper levels and start to slow down and turn towards the west. And exactly what's going to happen there is still a little bit hard to tell. We need to see exactly how the storm looks when it comes offshore, but generally gradual weakening is expected, and this is forecast to just be a tropical storm once it impacts China or Taiwan coming further north. And we could see as well some significant rainfall and storm surge, especially across Taiwan, where we have some high terrain across the interior part of the island, and we could see some very heavy rainfall, especially on the eastern side of the island as outer bands rotate in as it slowly makes this turn. And once it starts to decay away, it will likely be dissipating away as we get towards the latter half of this upcoming week and into this weekend. And the system will likely die out in the vicinity of China and Taiwan, not really expecting it to race off northeast into Japan like the storms normally do in this part of the world. But I'll have more videos on this as it progresses towards the northwest, closer to China and Taiwan. But stay safe in the Philippines as the system impacts the region today. And I'll leave links to the Picasa website at the top of the description so you can stay up to date on the latest advisories from that office. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.